When it comes to Hollywood sweethearts, so many ladies are on the list, but none of these actresses were quite like the amazing Carol Wayne. There was more to her than met the eye, and men from all over the world were drawn to her for reasons beyond her physical beauty. The matinee lady effect. It's the ultimate example of why men were drawn to her. She wasn't just another pretty face. She had this magical blend of innocence and sensuality that was downright magnetic. She'd walk onto the Tonight Show set with that dazzling smile, playing this sweet but slightly ditzy character who seemed completely unaware of how jaw-droppingly gorgeous she was. That mix of naivety and bombshell energy? Men couldn't resist it. Her flirtation was never over the top. It wasn't aggressive or intimidating. It was playful. It was the kind of teasing that left men grinning, wondering if there was a wink hidden behind her big doe-like eyes. And then you'd have Johnny Carson, cool as ever, setting her up for these hilarious double entendres. The chemistry between them was electric. Johnny would toss out a sly line, and Carol, with perfect comedic timing, would deliver a somehow innocent and suggestive response. It was pure magic. But here's the thing. She owned that character. Men watching at home saw her as the ultimate fantasy, a woman who was stunning, funny, and approachable. She didn't come across as untouchable or overly polished like some other stars of her time. Instead, she felt like someone you'd dream about meeting at a party, the kind of woman who'd laugh at your jokes and make you feel like the most interesting guy in the room. And let's not forget how her presence amplified Johnny Carson's humor. She wasn't just there to stand and look pretty, she was a comedic partner. She'd roll with the jokes, often playing the oblivious foil to Carson's quick wit, and men ate it up because it made her seem even more endearing. She was the bombshell with a heart and a sense of humor, and that's a rare combination. Men didn't just want to look at her, they wanted to be around her, and she was a classic Hollywood beauty. When you think of the ultimate 1970s bombshell, she fits the picture perfectly. Her striking blonde hair was the kind of golden cascade that turned heads wherever she went, effortlessly glamorous without looking overdone. But her hourglass figure? It was pure old Hollywood, the kind of silhouette men dreamed about and women admired. And then there was her smile, radiant and warm, with just the right amount of playfulness to make you feel like she had a secret she might share, but only with you. What set Carol apart from many other beauties of her time was how she embodied the idealized look of the era while still feeling relatable. She didn't have the icy, untouchable vibe of someone like Grace Kelly or the overpowering appeal of Raquel Welch. Carol was glamorous, yes, but in a way that felt down to earth. Her beauty wasn't intimidating. It was approachable. She looked like the kind of woman you could take to a fancy dinner and still joke around with afterward. Compared to her contemporaries, she struck a balance that was rare. Marilyn Monroe before her was all about mystery and seduction, while 1970s stars like Farrah Fawcett leaned more toward fresh-faced, sporty allure. Carol, on the other hand, seemed to exist in this perfect middle ground, effortlessly sexy, but never over the top. She carried herself with an ease that made men feel like they might actually have a chance with her, even if she was light years out of their league. Her look was so iconic because it wasn't just about her features, it was about her presence. When she walked into a room or appeared on screen, she didn't just attract attention, she held it. That mix of timeless beauty and an inviting charm was exactly what made Carol Wayne stand out and why she remains such a memorable figure from that golden era of television. Her magnetic personality. Her warm and friendly personality made her truly unforgettable. People who worked with her often described her as kind, approachable, and genuinely down-to-earth qualities that set her apart in the often cutthroat world of Hollywood. Unlike some stars of her era, she didn't put on airs or treat people like they were beneath her. Instead, she had a way of making everyone feel at ease, whether they were a co-star, a crew member, or a fan. One story that keeps popping up is how she treated everyone on set with the same level of respect and kindness. From assistants to producers, people would recall her stopping to chat, flashing that famous smile and making them feel seen. She had this knack for breaking the ice in a way that felt natural, even in high-pressure environments. For someone who radiated star power, she was remarkably humble. Johnny Carson, for one, seemed to really appreciate her easygoing nature. While he was known to have a sharp wit and sometimes a prickly demeanor, Carol's warmth helped create that effortless chemistry they shared during their sketches. She had a way of rolling with his jokes and never taking herself too seriously, which audiences loved. That same ability to laugh at herself made her even more endearing. She wasn't just another pretty face, but someone who could laugh along with the audience and with herself. There's another layer to her personality that made her relatable. Despite her fame, Carol was known to struggle with self-doubt and insecurity. Instead of hiding it, she let glimpses of that vulnerability show, and people loved her all the more for it. It made her human, someone you could root for, not just admire from afar. At the end of the day, Carol Wayne wasn't just someone men wanted to be with, she was someone everyone wanted to be around. Her genuine kindness and ability to connect with people made her as unforgettable off-screen as she was on it. Her playful humor. While she's best remembered for her comedic turn as the matinee lady on The Tonight Show, Carol showed time and again that she was far more than a one-note actress. Her ability to step into different roles, from drama to light-hearted comedy, left a lasting impression on audiences, and men, in particular, couldn't get enough of it. In the early stages of her career, Carol appeared in a variety of TV shows and films that showcased her range. She wasn't confined to one genre. For instance, she had roles on TV series like I Dream of Jeannie and the Man from UNCLE, where she played everything from a glamorous guest star to a more dramatic, mysterious character. These appearances were proof that she could adapt to any role, never letting her beauty overshadow her acting chops. In films like The Happy Hooker Goes to Washington and The Big Bus, Carol also showed her talent for both comedic and slightly risque roles, playing characters with humor and charm, but also depth. Men admired how effortlessly she shifted between roles, whether she was delivering deadpan comedy or adding a bit of dramatic weight to a scene. It was this ability to adapt that made her even more captivating. She wasn't just playing a part. She was bringing something unique to each role, keeping audiences interested and engaged. What really stood out was Carol's ability to balance her glamorous blonde bombshell persona with a more subtle, nuanced performance. In one instance, she played a more serious role on The Rockford Files, where she wasn't just eye candy, but a complex character with a storyline that required genuine acting. Men who had originally admired her for her comedic timing and beauty were now impressed by her depth and range. It wasn't just about looking good, she was showing them that she could handle more than just the dumb blonde stereotype. This versatility earned her a lot of respect. Men didn't just admire her for her beauty anymore, they saw her as someone with serious acting ability. She could walk into a comedy scene and have everyone in stitches, then shift into a more serious moment without missing a beat. That's what made her stand out in Hollywood, especially when so many actresses were pigeonholed into one type of role. Carol never allowed herself to be typecast, and men admired her for that. She was more than just the girl next door or the bombshell. She was an actress who could hold her own no matter the role. Her versatility made her even more appealing because it showcased her as an all-around woman, someone who could light up a screen with her humor, dazzle with her looks, and still hold the audience's attention when the story got serious. This rare combination is exactly why men admired Carol so much. She wasn't just a fleeting star. She was a true talent who could thrive in any role, and that kept her interesting long after the screen went dark. Her real vulnerability. Men were drawn to this aspect of her personality because it gave her an authenticity that made her feel real, like someone you could connect with on a deeper level. Behind her dazzling smile and glamorous image, Carol struggled with self-doubt and insecurity, something she often kept hidden from the public eye. Those who knew her best, though, recognized that she was not immune to the pressures that came with being a public figure in Hollywood. She sometimes questioned her looks, her worth, and her abilities, which, ironically, made her even more endearing. She wasn't perfect, and she didn't pretend to be. She showed a side of herself that was unguarded, and that's what made her more approachable and human in the eyes of men. What really made this vulnerability stand out was how she balanced it with the image of the glamorous star. When Carol stepped onto a stage or appeared on a talk show, it was clear she had a command of the room, but behind that public persona was a woman who longed for reassurance, just like anyone else. That contrast between the poised, on-screen bombshell and the more uncertain woman off-camera made her even more appealing. It was as though she wasn't trying to live up to an unattainable ideal. Instead, she allowed herself to be real, and that authenticity was something men appreciated. Men found this vulnerability refreshing because it's rare to see a woman in Hollywood, especially one as beautiful and glamorous as Carol, who didn't constantly project a sense of invincibility. Instead of hiding her flaws, Carol allowed them to be seen. It was this self-awareness, this ability to acknowledge her insecurities, that made her feel more grounded, more like someone you could actually get to know and understand. And yet, despite her vulnerability, she still commanded attention, and men found that balance irresistible. There's something deeply attractive about someone who is secure enough to embrace their imperfections. Carol's ability to show a softer, more introspective side while still radiating warmth and beauty is what made her so magnetic. She wasn't just a star, she was a person with depth, someone you could relate to beyond her on-screen roles. This vulnerability wasn't always visible in her work, but it shone through in the little moments. The way she interacted with her co-stars, her willingness to share a laugh at her own expense, or the times when she let her guard down just enough to reveal that she wasn't perfect. It made men admire her more because she wasn't just a fantasy or a flawless figure. She was someone who had her struggles, just like anyone else, and that made her more real and more lovable. Her captivating eyes. Carol Wayne's eyes were, without a doubt, one of her most captivating features, and they played a huge role in why men were so drawn to her. They were extremely beautiful, and had an incredible depth that could convey multiple emotions at once. In every scene, her big, expressive eyes spoke volumes, often saying more than words ever could. Whether she was in a comedic skit, a dramatic role, or just being herself on talk shows, those eyes became a window into her soul, making her instantly magnetic to anyone who watched. Her eyes had this perfect combination of innocence, mischief, and allure. They could look wide and innocent, like a sweet girl next door, and then, in the next moment, flicker with a hint of mischief or flirtation, making it clear that there was more to her than met the eye. In comedy sketches, her eyes were often used to her advantage. When she'd deliver a deadpan line or play the naive character, those big eyes would often give away her true understanding of the joke, creating a subtle but playful tension that made her even more endearing. In moments of romance or flirtation, her eyes were mesmerizing. They could convey a sense of longing or vulnerability, drawing men in with an unspoken promise of mystery and possibility. It wasn't just about how they looked, it was about how they made you feel. Carol's gaze had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, even if you were just watching her on TV. There was an intimacy in her eyes that made every scene more engaging. Her eyes were also a part of her charm in real life. When you hear people talk about Carol Wayne off-screen, many mention how her eyes would light up when she smiled or how they could convey warmth and kindness in an instant. Men admired how those eyes seemed to reflect her personality, genuine, approachable, but also undeniably captivating. What made Carol's eyes stand out even more was how they contrasted with the glamour and the polish of Hollywood at the time. While many actresses were made up to perfection, Carol's eyes told a different story. They were natural, full of life, and full of expression. They gave her an authenticity that set her apart from the typical Hollywood look. It wasn't just her beauty that men were drawn to. It was the way her eyes told stories, whether it was through the innocence of her gaze, the hint of mischief behind it, or the allure that made her impossible to look away from. Signature presence. There was something about the way she carried herself that commanded attention without needing to be the loudest or the most in-your-face person in the room. Whether she was on The Tonight Show next to Johnny Carson or in any scene, Carol had this quiet but powerful magnetism that made her stand out instantly. It was a rare quality, one that didn't rely on constant chatter or over-the-top gestures. Instead, it was all about the subtlety of her demeanor. First, there was the way Carol used her expressions. Her face could convey so much with just a slight arch of her eyebrow or the faintest smile. She didn't need to overact or exaggerate. With one look, she could go from playful to serious, from innocent to mischievous, and it always felt completely natural. Men were drawn to that. It wasn't the loud, dramatic gestures they were used to from Hollywood starlets. Carol's ability to draw attention through just a flicker of expression was fascinating. Then there was her posture. Carol always stood tall with grace, yet there was something incredibly relaxed about the way she held herself. She didn't seem stiff or forced. There was a confidence in the way she stood that came off as effortless. When she was in a scene, whether she was delivering a joke or just sharing a moment with Johnny Carson, she always seemed comfortable in her own skin. Her confidence didn't scream for attention, it simply was. Men admired that kind of natural, unshakable presence. She didn't have to prove anything. She simply existed, and that drew people in. Even when she was standing next to someone like Johnny Carson with his larger-than-life personality, Carol's presence was undeniable. She didn't need to be the center of attention to steal the scene. Just her standing there with her charm and grace made her magnetic. When she flashed a smile or tilted her head slightly, it was as if the whole room focused on her. She had this ability to make even the most mundane moments feel electric, simply because she was in the room. Men were drawn to this signature presence because it was different from what they saw in most Hollywood actresses of the time. While many were loud, flashy, or trying hard to be noticed, Carol had an ease about her that made you want to pay attention. It was as if she knew exactly how much to give, never too little but never overdone. She could be quiet yet commanding, subtle but striking, and that was part of what made her so unforgettable. Whether she was cracking a joke with Johnny or simply sitting in the background, Carol Wayne had a way of making every moment feel special just because she was there. Her quiet confidence. She didn't need to constantly remind everyone of her beauty or talent. She simply was beautiful and talented, and she carried herself with a quiet assurance that made her even more attractive. It wasn't the loud, attention-grabbing confidence often associated with Hollywood stars. Hers was more refined, more natural. Men loved that about her because it felt real. Carol didn't walk into a room and demand attention. She didn't need to. There was something about her presence that made you notice her without her having to say or do anything. Whether she was on The Tonight Show beside Johnny Carson or on set, she radiated an inner confidence that wasn't cocky or overbearing, but instead, it was a calm, collected strength that was magnetic. What made Carol's confidence so special was that it didn't come across as arrogance. She didn't flaunt her beauty or her success. She simply embraced it. While many stars in Hollywood could be seen trying to outshine everyone, Carol had a way of standing out without even trying. Her beauty was undeniable, but she never used it as a tool to overshadow others. There was an ease in the way she moved through the world, whether she was making a joke, sharing a moment with a co-star, or just sitting in the background. Men admired that effortless self-assurance because it felt grounded and authentic. It made her approachable rather than intimidating. Her confidence also made her incredibly charismatic. When she spoke, you listened, not because she demanded attention, but because there was something magnetic in her demeanor. She knew who she was and didn't feel the need to prove herself to anyone. It was a trait that made her even more appealing to men because it signaled that she wasn't just a pretty face. She had substance and an inner strength that didn't need to be broadcasted. It was the kind of confidence that made Carol feel like someone you could actually connect with, someone who was both strong and relatable at the same time. Men found that balance irresistible. Her ability to shine without overshadowing others, her self-assurance without arrogance. It was this quiet confidence that made Carol Wayne an unforgettable figure. Soft and compassionate. By every stretch of the imagination, she was someone who genuinely cared about others, and it showed in everything she did. Those who worked with her consistently spoke about how kind, thoughtful, and generous she was, both on and off the screen. This warmth made her someone you wanted to be around, someone you could talk to easily without the usual walls that come with fame. One of the things that stood out most about Carol was her ability to make people feel comfortable. Whether it was a fellow actor, a crew member, or even someone she met briefly, she had this way of making them feel seen and heard. She wasn't just nodding along to a conversation, she was fully present. That kind of attention to detail, the ability to make people feel important in an often fast-paced, impersonal industry, was something rare. Men especially were drawn to that. In a world full of superficial interactions, Carol's ability to be genuinely kind and compassionate was incredibly appealing. It was a reminder that beauty and fame don't need to overshadow who you are as a person. Carol's compassion wasn't just about being friendly, it was about her generosity of spirit. There are several stories of how she would go out of her way to help others, whether it was offering support to a colleague who was going through a tough time or just being a sounding board for someone in need. She didn't expect anything in return. She just had a natural instinct to care for the people around her. Men loved that quality because it showed depth. It was easy to admire someone for their looks, but it was the kindness behind those looks that made her unforgettable. She also had a softness in her approach to humor. While many actresses could be sharp or harsh in their delivery, Carol had a gentler way of getting laughs. Her comedic timing was flawless, but there was always an underlying sweetness in her performances. She didn't need to be biting or sarcastic to be funny. Her humor came from a place of warmth. That made her more relatable and human, which men found incredibly attractive.
It was as though the entire entertainment industry came to a halt when the news about Carol Wayne's passing was publicized. The actress, who had made a name for herself through her popular role as matinee lady on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, was a vibrant TV sensation in the 1960s and beyond. Absolutely no one saw her death coming. Carol's fate left many with questions about her personal life and the circumstances that led to her demise. From her painful journey to fame to the unresolved mystery of her death, this is the side of Carol Wayne's life that very few people know about, the high price of Carol's early career. Some of the most famous stars who have made waves in the entertainment industry didn't come from wealthy backgrounds. They had to spend years toiling and pouring into their craft before getting their big break. Carol Wayne's story was not very different, but her journey to fame began when she was only 3 years old. Most people who knew about Carol Wayne during the peak years of her career didn't know the story of how she got there. For someone who was bubbly and bright on TV, Carol actually endured a pretty tough childhood. At the age of 3, her mother pushed her to join a ballet school, and at the age of 6, she and her sister Nina were actively learning how to skate. But this was no fun experience for them, especially because of how rigorous the training sessions were. They were required to wake up every day by 5 a.m. to skate for 3 hours, and their practice continued for at least 5 hours after school. Carol and her sister were choked with activities, and they barely had any free time to enjoy the joys of childhood. When Carol was not in school, she was taking dance classes, skating classes, and doing several other activities. These put a lot of pressure on her at such a young age. While the other kids were playing and making memories with their families, Carol was busy perfecting her skating skills. At that point, it seemed like that was the price she had to pay for success. When she was asked about her childhood in a later interview, she uttered these words, "We missed a childhood of growing up." Thankfully, after several grueling years of training non-stop, Carol and her sister finally got what seemed to be a life-changing opportunity, but it came at a cost that they had to pay. She made an unconventional choice. It is often difficult to tell if a particular famous person finished school or not. When success comes knocking, no one really pays attention to the degrees and certificates anymore. This was the case for Carol Wayne, who later went on to become a well-known comedian. What a lot of her fans didn't know was that she had to sacrifice her education for her career. Because Carol was already pursuing a skating career in her teen years, other aspects of her life suffered greatly. She tried to juggle over 8 hours of training with schoolwork, But it didn't work, and everything changed when she was presented with an opportunity. Ice Capades had made a move to hire her and her sister for a tour, and that seemed like the beginning of her success as a skater. At the time, the Ice Capades were popularly known as traveling entertainment shows that particularly featured ice skating performances in a theatrical style. This was a huge opportunity for the Wayne sisters because it would allow them to not only showcase their skills in different towns and cities, but also enable them to garner fame. As a result of this, they dropped out of school in order to focus on their career, and it seemed like Carol was finally enjoying the fruits of her labor, but fate had other plans. While Carol and her sister were having the time of their lives on tour, something unexpected happened. Carol had a terrible skating accident that left her knee in a bad condition. The injury was so bad that she had to stop working and focus on recovery. By the time she had fully recovered, there was no place for her anymore. She practically lost her entire career, and there was nothing she could do about it. She and her sister were left in the cold with no career and no potential opportunities in view. In a later interview, Carol described this period of her life as a challenging one for her and her sister. In her words, "We were two pretty girls with no education. There was nothing else to do." More than a sex symbol. As you know, Carol's journey to fame was not an easy one. From the sacrifices she made earlier on in her life to the losses that she endured, Carol was met with setbacks on her journey, but she was determined to succeed in the entertainment industry. It seemed like her hard work finally paid off when she got a chance to appear alongside Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. During her time on the show, Carol made a lasting impression and quickly became a household name. On the surface, it seemed like Carol was focused on using her body to get attention, but what a lot of viewers didn't know was that she wanted to be seen as more than just a sex symbol. Carol worked tirelessly behind the scenes to hone her acting skills in order to get better roles, and she wanted to be appreciated for more than just her physical features. After appearing in over 100 sketches on the show, Carol was laid off from The Tonight Show, and that was the beginning of her career decline. It seemed like all her efforts to improve her career were not working out. She kept losing job after job, the alleged role her son played in her struggle with addiction. While Carol Wayne was going through difficult times, she desperately searched for an escape from her troubles. Her son, who was attending Beverly Hills High School at the time, allegedly thought it wise to introduce her to clove cigarettes. What started off with a single stick quickly morphed into an addiction as Carol found herself smoking profusely and indulging in other vices. Things got so bad the actress found herself filing for bankruptcy. The addiction took over her and she became a shadow of herself. Her career spiraled downward and it seemed like things were only getting worse for the actress. The alleged role her son played in her addiction is indeed surprising. The unsolved mystery of her demise. Of all the unsolved mysteries in Hollywood, Carol Wayne's death remains one of the most shocking. She had traveled for a vacation with her friend Edward Durston, and she was set to have a good time. According to the reports, she was staying with him at the Las Hadas Hotel, and from the look of things, they seemed to be having fun, but things got ugly pretty fast. On the day they were supposed to leave, they allegedly got into a disagreement that caused a delay in their departure. According to the reports from the hotel workers, Carol left angrily, and Edward allegedly booked another hotel. The next day, he was headed to the airport to travel back home. But before he left, he dropped her luggage at the airport and instructed the officials that she was coming to pick them up. It was on the 14th of January by 2 p.m. that her body was found off the coast of a resort in Mexico. On the surface, it looked like she had drowned, but no one knew when or how. In a bid to dig deep and find out what happened to her, an autopsy was carried out, and there were no drugs in her system. According to the autopsy report, she had been lifeless for over 2 days. One thing was for sure, the circumstances surrounding her death were not very clear. Some thought she took her own life, while others suspected that someone may have ended her life. Her family members and fans were left with so many questions that have remained unanswered since the 1980s. It's been decades since her death, and this mystery remains unsolved. Carol Wayne's death was indeed tragic, but she is remembered today for the life she lived and the people she inspired along the way. Hollywood certainly has its excesses, and Catherine Zeta-Jones's daughter, Karis, is determined to follow her mother's footsteps through it all. This video will give you an insight into Karis's life and what sets her apart from other celebrity kids.
If you remember Baywatch of 1997, then you're surely a fan of Carmen Electra. There's beauty, grace, and talent associated with the Hollywood star, but there's more to her than most of her fans know. The question is, how did a little girl from Cincinnati become such an amazing sensation? What you'll find when you take a trip down her life and memories will certainly blow your mind. Let's start from the very beginning. How it all began. Now, this is not your typical rags to riches tale.
Ooh, I like it muy macho. Now.
It all begins in the unassuming city of Cincinnati, Ohio. She wasn't born the Carmen Electra we know her as today. No. Her name was Tara Lee Patrick. She grew up in a place where the vibe was a far cry from what Hollywood has to offer. Let's face it, at the time Cincinnati was known for a lot of things. Great chili, baseball, maybe a bit of that Midwestern charm.
Too Midwest, what the hell does that even mean?
But it's not exactly the hot spot for aspiring stars. Yet, there she was, dreaming big and dancing her heart out. From a young age, Tara had the itch to perform. Her mom was a singer, and she saw firsthand what it meant to put your soul into the art. From watching her mother, she too wanted to perform. She desired to be in the spotlight and the whole world bowing to her talent. But life wasn't always a smooth ride. It came with its own bumps and heartbreaks. Her father was a guitarist and there was music at home, but they weren't rolling in cash. That struggle, that grind shaped her into a tough cookie, ready to face whatever came her way. But here's where things get wild, because no one could have seen what happened next. By a stroke of fate, or perhaps luck, her life changed dramatically. The leap from Cincinnati to Hollywood was a dream she nurtured, but let's be real, it's like wishing to be struck by lightning. Only this time, lightning had a name: Prince. Prince was her one-way ticket to Hollywood, and here's how it all happened. She was in Los Angeles trying to make it as a dancer, doing whatever gigs came her way when she met this guy who happened to be friends with Prince. He thought she had a spark, and he set up a meeting. Now, imagine being in her shoes, fresh from Ohio, and suddenly she's face to face with Prince, the icon. He had an eye for talent and saw something in this spunky girl from Cincinnati. He decided to give her a shot, which is already mind-blowing, right? But Prince being Prince, he had to make it his own. And this is where the story gets its biggest twist. Prince didn't just want to mentor Tara, he wanted to reinvent her. He looked at her and decided that Tara Lee Patrick just wasn't going to cut it. He believed she needed a name that had more punch, more star power, so he dubbed her Carmen Electra. One day you're a dancer scraping by in LA, and the next, the legendary Prince is not only taking you under his wing, but giving you a brand new name like some kind of pop culture fairy godmother. He basically said, "Tara's nice, but Carmen Electra, that is a star." And just like that, Carmen Electra was born. But Prince didn't stop there. He also signed her to his label, and they started working on an album together. It wasn't exactly a chart topper, but it was a huge leap for someone who was just dreaming of making it. For her, this was the start of a wild ride into the world of showbiz. It's like Prince opened a door to a new universe for her, and she had no idea what kind of roller coaster she was stepping onto. So, in the blink of an eye, a small-town girl with a big dream suddenly found herself in the orbit of a superstar. She went from Tara Lee Patrick to Carmen Electra with just a little nudge from one of the most enigmatic figures in music history. And that moment, meeting Prince, was like the universe hitting shuffle and landing on a track that would change her life forever. Her launch to fame. Now we get to the part that most people remember, the Baywatch years, when Carmen Electra became a full-blown, larger-than-life sensation. If you think of the 90s, there's no way you can skip over the cultural behemoth that was Baywatch. I mean, this show had it all. Slow-motion beach runs, red swimsuits, and those iconic lifeguard towers. And right there in the middle of it all was Carmen Electra. But let's rewind a bit. Before Baywatch, Carmen had already dipped her toes into the Hollywood pool. It's 1996. and Carmen is still finding her way in the entertainment world. She's already got some buzz around her thanks to her connection with Prince, but she hasn't quite reached that superstar status yet. And then she makes a bold move. She poses for Playboy. Now, this wasn't just any photo shoot, it was a full nude pictorial, and it put her right in the spotlight. At that time, posing for Playboy was a big deal. It was a statement, a way of saying, I'm here, I'm confident, and I'm not afraid to take risks. It was daring, especially for someone still trying to find her place in Hollywood. And get this, people couldn't get enough. That first shoot was such a hit that she ended up being featured in Playboy 4 more times over the years. What's wild is that these Playboy shoots did more than just put her in front of a camera. They transformed her into a pop culture symbol. It helped her get noticed in a different way, so people started paying more attention, and suddenly, she was a name you couldn't ignore. It was a strategic move that worked out big time, even if it came with its share of controversy and judgment. With all that buzz, she packed her bags and headed straight for Los Angeles, ready to take her next big leap into acting. And she didn't waste any time. She made her film debut in this quirky little indie movie called American Vampire in 1997. Now, this wasn't some blockbuster hit, but it was the perfect chance for her to test out her acting chops and start showing Hollywood she was more than just a pretty face in a magazine. But in that same year, little did she know she was about to take a gig that would truly make her famous, Baywatch. In 1997, the show is already a massive global hit, watched by millions around the world. So, when Carmen joined the cast as Lonnie McKenzie, it was like the universe handed her a rocket ship to fame. This was no ordinary TV role. Baywatch was basically the Game of Thrones of its time, but with more bikinis and beach rescues. Her job wasn't just about looking good on the beach, though that was a big part of the allure. Her role was about embodying a kind of glamorous, sun-soaked fantasy. She had the look, the confidence, and that unmistakable energy that made her an instant standout on the show. When she ran down that beach, all eyes were on her. And yeah, there were a lot of slow-motion shots that made sure of that. And let's talk about the cultural impact here. Carmen's time on Baywatch turned her into an icon, not just in America, but around the world. It's wild to think about, but Baywatch was syndicated in over 140 countries. That meant that in places as far away as Germany, Brazil, and Japan, people knew her face. She was suddenly part of that very small club of stars whose image was recognizable anywhere on the planet. Being a Baywatch lifeguard wasn't just a TV role. It was a passport to global stardom. Carmen became a staple of that 90s fantasy. Sun, sand, and saving the day, all with perfect hair and a smile. But here's the part that most people don't know. What it took to maintain that image behind the scenes. It's easy to look at those episodes and think, she's living the dream. And sure, she was in some ways. But Hollywood is tough, and the pressure to stay perfect under the spotlight is no joke. Imagine being in a role where millions of people scrutinize how you look in every single episode. Any slight change in appearance would spark rumors and tabloid stories. The constant pressure to stay fit, to keep up with the demands of being a sex symbol. It's like being on a treadmill that never slows down. She's opened up about how that pressure affected her, how she constantly felt like she had to live up to this superhuman version of herself that everyone saw on TV. It's a different kind of tough, where you have to keep smiling and keep that upbeat vibe even when things are chaotic behind the scenes. And let's not forget, the 90s Hollywood scene could be brutal for women. The expectations were intense, and there wasn't much room for mistakes or even just being human. Yet, Carmen managed to turn those challenges into a kind of superpower. She knew what people expected from her, and she leaned into it, turning herself into this untouchable Baywatch bombshell. She made it look easy, even when it wasn't, and that's what made her such a captivating figure. But as there were highs in her life, so were there a lot of lows. The hefty challenges. This part of Carmen Electra's story is where things get really heavy. Fame, magazine covers, red carpets, none of that could prepare her for what life threw her way in 1998. It's the kind of tragedy that changes a person forever. Within the span of just 2 weeks, she lost both her mother and her sister. Her mother, Patricia, passed away from a brain tumor, and right after that, Her sister Debbie died of a heart attack. It was like the ground had been ripped out from under her, and everything she knew and loved disappeared almost overnight. Imagine the heartbreak of losing the two people who know you best, who've been with you through every up and down. And it didn't just happen quietly behind the scenes. This was a time when Carmen was still very much in the public eye. She was known for her bubbly, carefree persona, but inside she was dealing with the kind of pain that would bring most of us to our knees. Grieving is hard enough on its own, but when you're in the spotlight, it's like you're expected to keep up appearances, to smile for the cameras when all you want to do is hide away and scream. Carmen herself has talked about how incredibly tough it was. She felt lost, alone, and like her world had just crumbled to pieces. But here's where her story gets even more real. She didn't just let that grief swallow her whole. She had moments of breaking down, of course, but she somehow found the strength to keep going. It's like she channeled all of that pain into this incredible inner resilience. She said in interviews that she had to learn how to let herself feel that grief instead of pretending it wasn't there. And as heartbreaking as it was, it made her realize just how strong she really was. For a while, work became her way of coping. She threw herself into her projects, into staying busy. But as anyone who's been through loss knows, that grief doesn't just disappear because you distract yourself. She had to go through the painful process of accepting what had happened, of figuring out who she was without her mother and sister in her life. What's incredible is that even in her most vulnerable moments, Carmen managed to turn her pain into a kind of strength. She became open about her loss, talking about it in interviews and sharing her story with fans. It was her way of connecting with people on a deeper level, and over time she started to bounce back. Not in a way that erased the pain, but in a way that honored it. It was like she took all that hurt and used it to build herself up again, piece by piece. She found ways to bring more positivity into her life, focusing on projects that made her happy and finding a sense of purpose beyond her roles on TV and in movies. It didn't happen overnight. Grief never really goes away. But she discovered that she had the strength to keep moving forward, to keep living fully, even when things felt impossible. The reinvention. Let's talk about one of the coolest parts of Carmen Electra's story, her ability to constantly reinvent herself. Carmen didn't just settle into one niche. She kept evolving, proving that she was way more than just a Baywatch babe. This is where we see her becoming a true icon of the 90s, the 2000s, and even today. First up, her MTV phase. After the Baywatch years, she jumped into hosting Singled Out, one of those gloriously over-the-top dating shows that only MTV could pull off in the 90s. This show was loud, ridiculous, and full of wild energy, and Carmen fit right in. She brought her own charm to the screen, making her the perfect match for the show's vibe. Plus, let's be honest, this era was peak MTV, with all the wild spring break specials, music videos, and celeb gossip. Carmen became the face of that scene, the girl who always knew where the party was, who could bring the fun and keep the energy high. It was a different kind of fame, but it was the kind that made her a household name for a whole new set of fans. But here's where things get really interesting. When the reality TV craze hit in the 2000s, Carmen wasn't afraid to dive in. She wasn't content with just being remembered as a 90s icon. She was ready to evolve again. That's when we saw her on The Surreal Life, a reality show that was like a big, strange cocktail of past-their-prime celebrities living together under one roof. And she didn't just show up and blend in. She embraced the chaos, had fun with it, and didn't take herself too seriously. She let her quirky, down-to-earth side show, and people loved it. It was like, hey, she's one of us. She's not afraid to make fun of herself or roll with the punches. And it wasn't just The Surreal Life. Carmen dabbled in all kinds of unexpected ventures that showed she was more than just a pretty face. She got into dancing and burlesque, bringing a little glam and sass to shows like the Pussycat Dolls. Think feathers, glitzy costumes, and some seriously bold moves. She wasn't afraid to take risks and try new things, even if it meant stepping outside of what people expected from her. And let's not forget those workout videos. Yes, Carmen Electra's aerobic striptease was a thing. And honestly, it's kind of genius. It's a mix of fitness and a little bit of cheeky fun, and it showed that she knew her audience. It was a playful twist on the whole exercise video craze, with a little bit of her own flavor thrown in. I mean, who else could make a workout routine feel like a dance party? But what really stands out about Carmen is how she's managed to keep her sense of humor through all of it. She's in on the joke. She knows the world remembers her for those iconic slow-motion beach runs, but she's also okay with laughing about it. She hasn't shied away from her past or tried to reinvent herself into something totally different. Instead, she's taken what people love about her and added new layers, embracing the weird twists of her career while staying true to who she is. Carmen's never really gone away. She's always found a way to stay in the mix, whether it's through a reality show, a fun throwback cameo, or just showing up on social media with that same carefree attitude. It's that ability to adapt and keep things light that has kept her around in a world where fame can be pretty fleeting. She's not just a nostalgia trip, she's someone who has rolled with every unexpected turn, made the best of it, and kept things interesting, and honestly, that's the kind of staying power that's hard to come by. More than a Hollywood symbol. Now for the wilder, more unexpected side of Carmen Electra's life, the stuff that goes beyond just being a sex symbol and pop culture icon. Sure, the world can't get enough of her stunning looks and that larger-than-life persona, but there's so much more to her than that. Take her charitable work, for example. Behind the glamorous exterior, Carmen has a huge heart. She's thrown her energy into causes that are close to her, like Head to Hollywood, a non-profit that supports brain tumor survivors. It makes sense, right? Remember, she went through the pain of losing her mom to a brain tumor, so she's out here trying to make life a little brighter for others going through something similar. And it doesn't stop there. She's also worked with Elevate Hope, which focuses on helping abused and abandoned kids, and the Hollyrod Foundation, providing support to those dealing with life-changing conditions like Parkinson's. It's like she's channeling all that empathy she's gathered from her own struggles into making a difference. Now, let's talk about some of the more offbeat moments in her career. Because with Carmen, there are plenty. Did you know she was a comic book model? Yep. She graced the covers of Razor and Ladies of London Night, showing that she was just as much a star in the world of graphic novels as she was on TV. And in the late 90s, she was the face of Max Factor, turning up in TV and print ads with that perfect camera-ready glow. She even became a spokesperson for men's hair color with Maxim, just another way she kept popping up in places you wouldn't expect. But here's where it gets really wild. In 2002, an extinct species of fly was named after her, Carmen Electra Chechisme. Why? Because of her splendid somal structure. Yes, you heard that right. And if you thought that was out there, just wait. Carmen also dipped into the world of wrestling, creating the Naked Women's Wrestling League in 2005, where she took on the role of commissioner. It was exactly what it sounds like. Part wrestling, part spectacle, and totally out of left field. But that's Carmen, always game to shake things up and try something new. Around the same time, she was the face of Ritz Camera Centers and even showed up in Taco Bell commercials.
Do you like my dress?
That'll do.
It's true. Taco Bell's big, tasty grilled stuffed burrito with double...
Basically, she was everywhere, always finding new ways to keep her name and face out there. Now, when you jump ahead to 2010, Carmen was still surprising people. She released a line of romance toys, which is honestly pretty on-brand for someone who's never been shy about embracing her sultry side. To promote them, she even appeared on the reality show The Spin Crowd, getting some PR magic to help bring her products to the spotlight. It was another example of her willingness to go wherever her interests and the business took her. But fame isn't always smooth sailing, right? Things were about to take a dramatic turn for her. In 2019, Carmen found herself in a legal battle when a strip club in Massachusetts, the Golden Banana, used her likeness on social media without her permission. She wasn't about to let that slide and joined forces with other celebs in taking legal action. It's a reminder that even after all these years, she's not one to back down when it comes to protecting her image. Amala Salem. She was a talented British actress celebrated for her roles in the James Bond and Doctor Who franchises, had a remarkable career that spanned decades. Born in India, she pursued her education at Heidelberg University in Germany, and the Central School of Speech and Drama in London. Her acting journey began in repertory theatre in Chesterfield and York, paving the way for her future successes. Salem gained notable recognition for her portrayal of Taos in the classic Doctor Who adventure The Robots of Death in 1977. She returned to the Doctor Who universe 11 years later, playing Professor Rachel Jensen in Remembrance of the Daleks, and later reprised both roles in audio plays by Big Finish Productions. She passed away on February 21st at the age of 80. Anne Whitfield. The actress best known for playing Susan Waverly in White Christmas passed away at age 85 on February 15 at Valley Memorial Hospital in Yakima, Wash, following an accident, according to a notice on the blog of Burien Wash. Born in Oxford, Mississippi in 1938, Whitfield moved to Hollywood with her mother as a child while her father was deployed in World War II. She quickly began working as an actor on nationally broadcast radio programs like The Phil Harris Alice Faye Show and One Man's Family. At age 15, Whitfield played Susan Waverly, the granddaughter of Major General Thomas Waverly, Dean Jagger, in the holiday classic White Christmas. Susan encourages her grandfather to host a performance by the film's main characters, played by Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, and Vera Ellen, at his hotel, which ultimately yields a moving tribute to the general himself. Whitfield's obituary states that she watched White Christmas with her family in December 2023 in celebration of the film's 70th anniversary. Chita Rivera. The legendary Tony Award-winning actress and singer Chita Rivera passed away on January 30th at 91 after a brief illness. Best known for her groundbreaking role as Anita in West Side Story, she earned numerous accolades throughout her career, including Tony Awards for Kiss of the Spider-Woman and The Rink, leaving an indelible mark on Broadway. Joyce Randolph. Remember the sitcom Honeymooners? Well, Joyce was the last surviving member of the cast. Best known for her role as housewife Trixie Norton, she appeared in 39 episodes alongside stars like Audrey Meadows and Art Carney. Joyce Randolph passed away on January 13th at the age of 99 due to natural causes. Lynn Marta. Renowned for her guest roles on television and notable appearances in films like Footloose and 3 Men and a Little Lady, Lynn was a legend in her own right. She began her career in 1966 with an appearance on Gidget and became a featured player on the anthology series Love, American Style in 1969. Marta's film credits include a role in Clint Eastwood's Joe Kidd, and she had guest spots on popular shows such as Kojak, Charlie's Angels, and Designing Women, as well as a significant role in Days of Our Lives from 1983 to 2003. She passed away on January 11th at the age of 78 after battling cancer. Maggie Smith. At a young age, Maggie Smith, born on December 28, 1934, faced a rather formidable obstacle to becoming an actress: her grandmother, who advised Smith's mother not to let the girl go on stage. She said, "You can't let her, not with a face like that," Smith recounted to Sunday Morning in 2002, "and I think it made me so angry that I decided that I'd have a go." The roles that the two-time Oscar winner subsequently played on screen and on stage projected the same determination Smith had faced down her grandmother with all those years ago. And in perhaps her most famous role as the prickly, imperious Lady Violet Crawley in the TV series Downton Abbey, or perhaps it was Maggie, her role in Harry Potter franchise as she portrayed the character of Minerva McGonagall, the stern yet caring deputy headmistress of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. She passed away on 27 September 2024.